I'm hearing everybody talk, and this kind of question popped in my mind of like, is is duty coming after marriage like the way of old? And now, with all of the hesitation of women leaving marriages for the sake of happiness, are men now requiring a woman to show a level of duty before committing to marriage?
I would agree with that. I think that a lot of people, I think a lot of women need to show some of those characteristics and quality to know what type of person you are and what type of family you come from and what type of value system you have. You know what I'm saying? But a lot of people are not asking those questions or having those types of conversations, and they don't know. And it's like, okay, like we've been in this relationship or this situationship and we like each other and evolve, but I don't know how you handle this or how you handle that, or you know what I'm saying, what are your feelings and thoughts about responsibility? What are your thoughts and feelings about, being playing in a supportive role? And sort of a lot of people today tend to kind of wing relationship. A lot of people are kind of shooting from the hips. Let's just be very honest. You know what I'm saying? It's the wild, wild west out there a little bit. For those who are honestly and genuinely moving with intentions, they have a much better vetting and filtering system as opposed to them picking mates. But most people are just trying to find their way. And what tends to get missed is those important conversations that allow you to understand whether this woman has or possesses all these qualities or even grew up, you know what I'm saying, being a wife. Some people don't never, you know what I'm saying, never saw their mother be a wife to their father because that person wasn't present or they passed away or there wasn't other avenues or other members in their family where they seen that. So we're not a monolith. You know what I'm saying? There are pockets of different cases, but I think for the most part, the way our society has shifted, you know what I'm saying? We tend to kind of want, in air quotes, these old values and traditions. But today we are moving and operating in a completely different manner where we understand that inherently a lot of people are not growing up in the same type of household with the same value or similar structure systems. Are you?
I was gonna say, so kind of going back because it was just reeling in my head in terms of, do a person have a duty prior to marriage? So in my mind, what I was thinking is a responsibility. So I just kind of looked up, is there a difference between duty and responsibility? And I was like, oh, okay. So I think prior to a marriage, you have responsibility. Um, and you have duty after a marriage. And so what I found out is that duty is basically something that has to deal with being like a moral obligation or a legal obligation, by law, things like that. So when you're not married, you don't have a legal obligation to anybody, or no moral obligation to them in that regard when we're looking at duty. But the responsibility is more along the lines of, that's something in which you take on yourself, or you handle on your own. And so I think that's what happens in the relationship prior to marriage. You decide what responsibilities you're going to take on in the relationship. But then once you make that commitment, if you're religious, if you make that commitment under God, at that point it becomes a moral obligation, an obligation. And then when you sign them papers, now it's a legal obligation or responsibility according to law. But what I don't like, well, what is kind of pushed out a lot of times is that duty and happiness, they act like it can't coexist. And duty and happiness can coexist. Sometimes the duty, the consistency of those duties can also support your happiness. If somebody is fulfilling their role as a husband or as a wife, that duty to the marriage, it makes you happy. It doesn't say that you're always going to be happy for the duration of the marriage, but I just don't like the fact that people act like duty and happiness can't coexist.
I think that's a
I don't, I
great
don't think it
point.
can consistently. I don't
Go
think it
ahead.
can. I just don't think it can, because we've seen there's times when a man will do what he needs to do, but yet it's still not enough for the woman. You have women who may be overly materialistic, and he's doing what he needs. He's providing a roof over head, providing means of transportation, food, and shelter, and all that good stuff. But it just might not be enough. It might not be up to her standards, and so now she's no longer happy.
Or sounds like a lack of duty on her part. Maybe.
That's true.
I don't think that's the most. I mean, that can definitely happen, but I think that at some point his duty did make her happy. I think you can still be happy with, in the line of duty. It's my duty to prepare a meal for my family. But you know what? I like making a family. I like to see my family sit down and eat dinner together of something I prepared. That's two things in one. I don't.
What I think affects people's happiness is when they do something willingly, they sign up for it, and we could say they sign those legal documents, and they are expecting something to be what it isn't. Because when you expect it to be, when there's drama, sometimes arguments, naturally, then you're not surprised when it happens. And I think a lot of people's happiness is affected because they have expectations that are unrealistic from the get-go. So it's like, if you're making this duty, like I would imagine, I'm not a parent, but I'm imagining as a parent, your duty, your kid's going to be rotten sometimes, like they're a little child, but you don't get all mad and annoyed. Like, how could you be like this? Like, that comes with it. You know what I mean? And I think that sometimes people forget in the line of duty that there's things that come with it that are messy. And when you remember that it comes with it, that doesn't affect your well-being or your happiness. Does that make sense? Hopefully.
No, that makes sense. I mean, okay, so there's no magical power that happens when you go from a relationship to marriage. You know what I'm saying? It's the mindset that you already had adapted prior to being married. Now you're just shifting from being boyfriend and girlfriend or partner to a husband and wife, right? There's this transition of title, but the titles mean a lot less if the commitment isn't backed up by the title. I've heard women before say, I'm single until married. They're in a relationship, maybe a year or two, but they were like, I'm with my person, et cetera, but I'm single until married because things can change. There's no commitment. We have an agreement, we have an understanding, but he hasn't proposed to me. I am not yet his wife. And sort of there is that loose threshold in that relationship, right? And I think that the reason why a lot of people become unhappy is because they have uncommunicated expectations. You brought up expectations, Coach K, but the reason why that is that people don't, talk about those expectations up front. They just have this thing. They're like, yes, it's going to be like this, and this, and I'm going to feel this way, as opposed to saying, this is what I expect out of our marriage, out of our relationship, out of our long-term commitment. You know what I'm saying? These are the things that I will hope that we can work on, or the things that we can strive at. Those things, those expectations are not communicated up front, and people get upset and mad when the other person doesn't fulfill those, uncommunicated expectations because they haven't really had the conversation to begin with.
So that statement makes me really curious, Luis. Like, are we assuming that, like, and this is like in general, right? Are we assuming that once we get married, everybody just knows what the duties are and fulfills them? Like, is that part of the uncommunicated expectations? Like, we just assume that when you get married, signing that document means everybody flips a switch and becomes the perfect spouse.
Yes, and people should be already trying to become a wife or a husband in that, or at least the mindset of it before they transition, right? Because your upbringing in your two-parent household and how you seen your parents interact in their relationship and their marriage is a lot different than my parents. And sort of, I'm coming in, or I might be coming in with my expectations or my lived experience is, right, and you're coming in with your lived experience that sometimes might not align or gel, and sort of therefore, because we come from a two-parent household, or because we have, you know, marriage backgrounds from family members, that we automatically have this like already set in stone understanding of what that looks like and what it is. And sometimes we got to understand that everybody's upbringing is a little bit different, and those conversations need to happen prior to that engagement.